In this video, we're going to start our introduction to multi-selection with if-else-if statements. So multi-selection statements. So in reality, we're often faced with many more than two choices. So as such, we need a way to emulate this in our programs. So for example, if you're making Super Mario Brothers, at any given time, the user could choose to move left, move right, jump, duck, climb, and even throw a fireball. We will achieve this using if-else-if statements and switch statements. So we're going to start with if-else-if statements. So let's look at the general syntax. So we're used to our if test condition, and that's what we're going to start it with. You always have one if test condition to start off your selection statements. And then if that test condition is true, then the block of code inside the curly brackets will execute. Now, if we want to add some other options, we use else to represent all possible conditions if nothing else is true. But we can also put in a couple more test conditions, or even more than this, as else if. So we also have two more conditions in this syntax. You can have an infinite number of else ifs and then still have your else at the end. You could also even not even have the else at the end, but that may cause issues if you haven't really thought of all possible conditions. So how this works, if the first condition is true, then that block of code will execute. If that first condition is false, then the second condition is checked. And if the second condition, so test condition 2, ends up being true, then that block of code will execute because since no other conditions above it are true, so that one will execute. And then test condition 3, the block of code will execute if all conditions above test condition 3 are false, so that one is true, and that one is true. And then again, with our else at the end, if nothing above is true, if they're all false, then the else will execute. So as an example, we have the hour equal to 5 as an integer and our greeting, which is equal to hi as a string. If the hour is less than 10, then we will change the value of greeting to good morning. If it's not less than 10, but it is less than 20, then our greeting becomes good day. But then if both of those are false, then our final else block will actually execute and the greeting will become good evening. And that's what will be executed here. So since we started with hour is equal to 5, we know that the first condition will be true, so greeting will become good morning, and that's what will be executed in the output statement. Now, once one of these test conditions becomes true, the others below it are also not checked. It skips the remainder. So once it finds one that's true, it executes the block of code inside of it, and then goes to the very end of these selection statements and continues on with the code. Okay, so what would be the output for this code? We know that it would be good day. Since our hour is equal to 5 and the hour is less than 20 here for this first one. Now notice we've switched where the 10 and the 20 are. Okay, so this is going to output good day, but it will not output good morning. Okay, so the problem here is that it's not actually what's intended. So we want to be able to output good morning if the value is less than 10. But we need to be careful when we're using our selection statements and make sure that they're in an order that makes sense. So once the first condition recognizes that hour is less than 20, and then it will execute that block of code. Now, based on what's happening here, what we really wanted was for good morning to be outputted because we're looking for a number that's less than 10. But it finds that the number is less than 20 first, and it ignores the remainder of this code. Some notes on if-else-if statements. So only the first condition to evaluate to true will be executed, and all others will be skipped, even if they are true. Okay, so just like on the last slide. So the order of test conditions matters since only the first true test will be entered. This can sometimes be avoided by using compound test conditions to create ranges of allowable values. So you could say between 0 and 10, between 11 and 20. And we've looked at the Boolean operators that you can use to do this. Each if-else if statement has only one if, so you've noticed that I've only put one if at the top in each of those examples. And the else condition is optional, but it can be removed, but at your own risk. So you need to make sure that you have covered all possible conditions, and that even though it skips that not having an else condition, that it doesn't affect the remainder of your code. The number of else ifs can be from 0 to infinity, so you can add as many as you want. You can also nest as well. Now let's take a look at this one. So in this, we have two different sets of selections. You'll notice that on the left-hand side, there's if, else if, and then on the right side, there are two if statements. Now, what I want you to do is program both of these into, make a program with both of them in there, and start by setting the number equal to 2, and watch what happens as you go through these different sets of selection statements. Now, there is a difference between having the two ifs versus having the if and the else if. Okay, so when you're testing these, start with a 2 and a -2 and see what happens. So pause the video now, copy that code down into a program of your choice, and watch what happens. If you have any questions, let us know.